The Dyatlov Pass incident is a name that chills the bone. It speaks of a mystery that has endured for decades. In late January 1959, a group of experienced hikers embarked on an ambitious trek. They ventured into the remote Ural Mountains of the Soviet Union. Their destination was Otorten Mountain, a challenging peak. The group consisted of 9 individuals, mostly students from the Ural Polytechnical Institute. They were young, adventurous, and skilled in winter expeditions. Little did they know their journey would become one of history's most unsettling enigmas. Their story would captivate and horrify generations to come. The leader of this ill-fated group was Igor Dyatlov. He was a 23-year-old engineering student. Dyatlov was known for his meticulous planning and experience in harsh conditions. The team included 7 men and 2 women: Lyudmila Dubinina, Zenaida Kolmogorova, Rustam Slobodin, Yuri Yudin, Yuri Doroshenko, Yuri Krivonashenko, Alexander Kolovatov, Semyon Zolotaryov, and Nikolai Thibault Brignol. Yuri Yudin would, by a twist of fate, turn back early due to illness. This departure would save his life. He would be the last person to see the core group alive and well, full of anticipation for the adventure that lay ahead for them. Their initial plan was to ski across the harsh, snow-covered landscape. They aimed to reach Otorten Mountain and return. This was classified as a Category 3 expedition. It was the most difficult classification for sports expeditions in the Soviet Union at the time. The group was well equipped for the severe winter weather. They carried diaries and cameras documenting their early progress. These recovered items would later provide haunting glimpses into their final days. Their entries showed good spirits and determination. They faced the initial challenges of their route with typical resilience and camaraderie, unaware of the tragedy that was looming. The journey began with typical enthusiasm. The hikers traveled by train, then by truck, to the village of Vizhai. This was the last inhabited settlement before the vast wilderness. From Vizhai, they continued on skis. They pulled sleds laden with their supplies and equipment. The landscape was beautiful but unforgiving. Snow lay deep upon the ground. The temperatures were brutally cold. Their early photographs depict a team working well together. They were navigating through dense forests and across frozen rivers. Each step took them further from civilization and closer to the mystery that would eventually consume them. The group had an expected date of return. They were supposed to send a telegram to their sports club by February 12th. When this date passed without any word, initial concern was mild. Delays were not uncommon in such demanding expeditions. However, as more days slipped by, anxiety began to mount among their families and friends. The Ural Polytechnical Institute started to organize a search party. The vastness of the Ural wilderness made this a daunting task. The area was remote and sparsely populated, making any search operation incredibly difficult from the outset. Time was a critical factor in the harsh winter conditions. On February 20th, the first volunteer search teams, composed of students and teachers, set off. Aviation support soon joined the effort. The searchers faced the same brutal conditions the hikers had encountered. They scoured the Pred-Polagaimi route, hoping to find any sign of the missing group. For days their efforts yielded nothing. The snow-covered landscape offered few clues. The silence of the mountains was profound and unsettling. Hope began to dwindle with each passing day. The mystery of their disappearance deepened with every fruitless search. The vast expanse seemed to have swallowed them whole, leaving no trace behind. The breakthrough came on February 26th. A search pilot spotted something unusual on the eastern slope of Kholat Syakhl. This mountain's name translates from the local Mansi language as Dead Mountain. It was not their intended destination, Otorten, but a deviation. Ground teams reached the location. They found the hiker's tent. It was badly damaged and partially covered with snow. Crucially, the tent appeared to have been cut open from the inside. This suggested a desperate and hurried escape. It was a chilling discovery that immediately raised more questions than answers. Why would experienced hikers abandon their shelter in such a manner? Inside the tent, most of the group's belongings remained. Their shoes, warm clothing, supplies, and even their money were left behind. This was perplexing. To venture out into the sub-zero temperatures without adequate protection was a death sentence. Investigators found a trail of footprints leading away from the tent. They headed downhill, towards a nearby tree line about 1.5 kilometers away. Some footprints were made by bare feet, others were made by feet clad only in socks or a single shoe. This indicated extreme haste and panic. The scene suggested a sudden, terrifying event had forced them to flee their only shelter. The trail of footprints led the searchers to the edge of a nearby forest. Under a large, ancient cedar tree, they made their first grim discovery. The bodies of Yuri Krivonyshenko and Yuri Doroshenko were found. They were lying side by side. Both men were stripped down to their underwear. Remnants of a small fire were found nearby. Branches on the cedar tree were broken up to a height of 5 meters. This suggested someone had tried to climb it, perhaps to get a better view or escape a threat. The men had died of hypothermia. But the circumstances were deeply troubling and pointed to a desperate struggle. A short time later, 3 more bodies were found. These were Igor Dyatlov, Zenaida Kolmogorova, and Rustem Slobodin. Their bodies were discovered between the cedar tree and the abandoned tent. Their positions suggested they had been attempting to return to the camp. Dyatlov was found lying on his back, an arm clutching a birch branch. Kolmogorova was found furthest up the slope, her face covered in blood, though not fatally injured. Slobodin had a minor skull fracture, but like the others, hypothermia was listed as the cause of death. The scene painted a picture of a desperate, failed attempt to seek safety or help. The search for the remaining 4 hikers continued for more than 2 months. Their bodies were finally discovered on May 4th. They were found buried under 4 meters of snow in a ravine, about 75 meters deeper into the woods from the cedar tree. These were Lyudmila Dubinina, Alexander Zolotaryov, Nikolai Thibault Brignol, and Alexander Kolovatov. The condition of these 4 bodies presented the most disturbing and baffling evidence of the entire incident. Their injuries were far more severe than those found earlier. They were also better dressed than the first 5, some wearing clothes taken from their deceased comrades. The injuries sustained by this last group were horrific and inconsistent with simple hypothermia. Nikolai Thibault Brignol had suffered severe skull damage. Lyudmila Dubinina and Semyon Zolotaryov had major chest fractures. These injuries were described by medical examiners as being consistent with the force of a major car crash. Most disturbingly, Dubinina was found missing her tongue, eyes, and part of her lips. Zolotaryov was missing his eyeballs. Alexander Kolovatov, though also found with them, had died of hypothermia without such brutal trauma. Some of their clothing items also showed traces of radioactive contamination, adding another layer of mystery. The official Soviet investigation into the Dyatlov Pass incident concluded in May 1959. It stated that the hikers had died as a result of a compelling natural force. This explanation was frustratingly vague. It failed to address the many bizarre details of the case. Why did they cut their way out of the tent? Why were they improperly dressed in freezing conditions? What caused the severe internal injuries to some of the hikers? The files were subsequently classified. This only fueled speculation and suspicion that the authorities were concealing the true nature of the event. The lack of clear answers left a void that would be filled by countless theories. Over the years, numerous theories have been proposed to explain the tragedy. One common theory is an avalanche. However, experienced mountaineers have questioned this. The slope where the tent was pitched was not particularly steep. The tent itself was not completely buried. The footprints leading away from the tent were undisturbed by avalanche debris. Another natural explanation involves infrasound. This theory suggests that wind passing over the mountain topography could have generated low-frequency sound waves. These waves could induce feelings of intense panic and nausea, causing the hikers to flee irrationally. Paradoxical undressing, a known phenomenon in hypothermia cases, could explain the lack of clothing. More sensational theories involve human intervention or unexplained phenomena. Some speculate about secret military weapons testing in the area. Strange orange spheres, possibly missiles or UFOs, were reportedly sighted in the sky by other witnesses around that time. The radiation found on some clothing items supports this idea for some. Others suggest an attack by local Mansi tribesmen, though investigators found no evidence of this. The Mansi were peaceful and even assisted in the search. Then there are the more outlandish theories involving yetis or other unknown creatures. Each theory attempts to reconcile the strange evidence, but none fit all the facts perfectly. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most compelling unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. The combination of bizarre circumstances, horrific injuries, and the lack of a definitive explanation continues to fascinate and disturb. It has inspired numerous books, documentaries, films, and countless online discussions. New investigations, including one reopened by Russian authorities in 2019, have sought to provide clarity, but have largely reaffirmed earlier, albeit still debated, conclusions like an avalanche. The enduring power of the Dyatlov Pass story lies in its unanswered questions. The truth about what happened on that desolate mountainside in February 1959 remains buried with the 9 hikers, a chilling testament to the unknown.